thinking person could fail to call slaughtering unthreatening Japanese mass murder. People, particularly Americans, have offered many justifications and excuses for Truman's mass slaughter. That it was necessary to end the war. That it was necessary to save tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of American lives. But as Truman at the time knew, and as his advisors, including his military advisors, told him prior to the bombing of Hiroshima, none of these was true. Then Supreme Allied Commander of the forces in Europe and soon-to-be American President Dwight Eisenhower explained, during his recitation of the relevant facts about the plan for using the atomic bomb, I had been conscious of a feeling of depression, and so I voiced to him, Secretary of War Henry Stimson, my grave misgivings, first on the basis of my belief that Japan was already defeated and that dropping the bomb was completely unnecessary, and secondly because I thought that our country should avoid shocking world opinion by the use of a weapon whose employment was, I thought, no longer mandatory as a measure to save American lives. It was my belief that Japan was, at that very moment, seeking some way to surrender with a minimum loss of face. Truman, in his press release informing the American people about the annihilation of Hiroshima, offered the primitive logic of retribution. The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid many-fold. These justifications notwithstanding, the best that can be said for Truman, for those Americans, in August 1945, 85%, and others who supported his mass slaughters, and for those who have been duped by the drumbeat of self-exculpation into believing that the slaughter was just, in 1995, 72% of Americans aged 50 to 64, and 80% of those 65 and older, is that he and they, not otherwise wicked people, perpetrated or supported this twin horror owing to erroneous information or reasoning, to moral blindness, or to hardened hearts after years of war. Even this best face does not change what Truman did. What if Adolf Hitler had dropped a nuclear bomb on a British or American city? What if during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Nikita Khrushchev had incinerated Miami? Would we not call such acts mass murder, even though in Hitler's case it would have also been done with the veneer of a rationale that it was a military operation and not the mass slaughter of non-combatants? In the case of Hitler, we would inscribe his act prominently in his long ledger of evil. Why should Truman's wholesale extermination of so many men, women, and children be different? What if the Japanese had not surrendered a few days after Nagasaki's bombing, and Truman had proceeded to annihilate another Japanese city, and then another, and another, and another? At what point would people stop making excuses? At what point would all people speak plainly about his mass murdering? Why would the successive nuclear annihilation of the people of, say, 5 or 10 Japanese cities be deemed mass murder, which undoubtedly it would be, but the slaughter of the Japanese of only 2 cities not be? Or what if the Americans had conquered a few Japanese cities, stopped their advance, and proceeded to shoot 140,000 Japanese civilians, men, women, and children, the number who died immediately or from injuries in the next few months from the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, explaining to Japan's leaders and its public that only the surrender would prevent more mass slaughters? Would Truman's apologists have similarly justified this more conventional mass murdering as militarily and morally necessary? What if 3 days later Truman ordered American soldiers to shoot another 70,000 Japanese men, women, and children from a second city? Would we not call such slaughters mass murder? Except for the technological difference between 210,000 bullets and 2 nuclear bombs, the nuclear bombs destroyed also the cities themselves and subsequently caused at least another 60,000 deaths owing to radiation poisoning and other injuries. It is hard to see how, in deciding whether each constitutes mass murder, these 2 scenarios differ in any conceptually or factually meaningful way. Truman's chief of staff, William Leahy, a Navy